Valentina Delacroix hadn't felt this terrified since the day she'd signed her divorce papers, but here she was, sitting across from a kind-eyed accountant named Marcus, who'd asked her to dinner after 3 months of cautious conversation at the community center where they both volunteered. The restaurant was nicer than anywhere she'd been in years, all warm Edison bulbs and exposed brick, the kind of place that made her feel like maybe she deserved something good again. Marcus was telling her about his sister's new puppy, his hands animated, his smile genuine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Valentina thought she might actually be capable of trusting someone new. Then she heard Damien's voice cut through the quiet murmur of conversation like a blade through silk. "Well, isn't this pathetic?" Her entire body went rigid. Marcus stopped mid-sentence, his expression shifting from open to confused as Valentina's face drained of color. She didn't want to turn around. She didn't want to give Damien the satisfaction of seeing her react. But she could already feel the attention of nearby tables shifting, could sense the room's energy changing as her ex-husband's voice grew louder. "Valentina Delacroix, out on a date? What poor bastard did you trick into this?" Marcus half rose from his seat. "Excuse me, do you know this guy?" "He's nobody," Valentina whispered, but her voice came out strangled, powerless. She hated how small she sounded, how immediate the old fear was. Damien appeared at the edge of their table, and Valentina's stomach dropped. He looked exactly as he had during the worst days of their marriage, all manufactured charm layered over cruelty. He'd dressed well tonight, probably coming from drinks with colleagues, and he wore the same expression he'd always worn when he wanted to remind her that he could take anything good away from her whenever he chose. "Nobody. That's cold, Val, after everything we shared." Damien leaned against the neighboring table, forcing its occupants to shift uncomfortably. "Though I suppose I should warn you, friend. She's got a victim complex a mile wide. Everything's always someone else's fault. Nothing's ever her responsibility." "I think you should leave," Marcus said. But there was uncertainty creeping into his voice now, and Valentina could see it happening, could watch in real time as Damien poisoned this fragile new thing before it had a chance to grow. "Oh, I'm just trying to help you out. Save you the trouble I went through." Damien's voice carried across the restaurant now, performing for an audience. 4 years of marriage, and not once did she cook a decent meal. Not once did she make our house feel like a home. Just constant complaining, constant demands. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Valentina's hands were shaking. She knew she should stand up, should tell him to stop, should defend herself. But the familiar paralysis was settling over her, the same crushing weight that had kept her silent through years of small humiliations and casual cruelties, through public criticisms disguised as jokes and private rages disguised as concern. "Listen, maybe we should just—" Marcus started, and Valentina knew what was coming before he finished. "It's fine," she heard herself say. "We can reschedule." But she could see in Marcus's eyes that there wouldn't be a rescheduling. He was already mentally backing away, already deciding this was too much drama, too much baggage, too much risk. Who could blame him? They'd known each other for 3 months. He didn't owe her anything. "Smart man," Damien said approvingly as Marcus reached for his wallet. "Trust me, you're dodging a bullet." The manager appeared then, finally, a thin man with an apologetic expression that somehow made everything worse. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to keep your voice down. You're disturbing other guests." "I'm disturbing them? My ex-wife is here on a date 3 months after our divorce was finalized, and I'm the problem?" Damien laughed, loud and ugly. "Unbelievable!" The manager's eyes flickered to Valentina with something like pity, then back to Damien with something like resignation. "Please, sir, let's not make a scene." "I think the scene's already been made," Marcus said quietly. He'd put 2 20s on the table, more than enough to cover their barely touched appetizers. "Valentina, I'm sorry, but I don't really do drama. I hope you understand." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Marcus stood, maneuvered around Damien, and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Several other diners had stopped eating entirely, watching the spectacle unfold with various mixtures of discomfort and prurient interest. There you go. Back where you belong. Alone. Damien straightened, looking satisfied with himself. Enjoy your dinner, Val. Try not to make a scene when the check comes. I know how you get about money. He left then, finally, trailing triumph behind him like cologne. The manager murmured something apologetic and scurried away. The other diners slowly returned to their meals, no longer looking at her, and somehow that was worse than their stares. Valentina sat frozen at the table, her vision blurring, her carefully applied makeup surely running as tears spilled down her cheeks despite her best efforts to hold them back. She'd tried so hard tonight. Had spent an hour picking out the right dress, not too nice, not too casual. Had practiced in the mirror what to say if Marcus asked about her marriage. Had worked up the courage to believe, even for just one evening, that she might be allowed to start over. And Damien had taken it away, just like he'd taken everything else. Valentina forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way her therapist had taught her. She needed to leave. Needed to pay for the food they hadn't eaten and get out of here before she completely fell apart in public. She raised her hand to signal the waiter, but before she could catch anyone's attention, a figure appeared beside her table. Miss Delacroix. The voice was unlike anything Valentina had heard before, cultured and quiet and carrying an authority that seemed to still the air itself. She looked up, wiping hastily at her eyes, and found herself staring at a man who didn't quite look like a man at all. He was beautiful in a way that seemed almost architectural, all precise angles and aristocratic features. His hair was pure white, swept back from a high forehead, and his skin had the luminous pallor of fine marble. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, perfectly tailored, midnight black with subtle charcoal pinstripes, but it was his eyes that made her breath catch, pale gray like winter skies, ancient and knowing and impossibly kind. I apologize for the disturbance you experienced this evening, he continued, his slight accent impossible to place, elegant and old world. It was unacceptable, and it will not happen again. Valentina didn't know what to say. Thank you, but it's not your fault. You don't need to apologize. Nevertheless, he gestured to the chair Marcus had vacated. May I? She should say no. She didn't know this man, and she'd just had her evening destroyed by her ex-husband in front of dozens of strangers. The last thing she wanted was more attention, but something about him made her nod, made her fold her hands in her lap and try to compose herself as he sat down with fluid, economical grace. My name is Raphael Paragrove, he said. I am the new owner of this establishment as of approximately 20 minutes ago. Valentina blinked. I'm sorry, what? I was dining upstairs in the private room when I became aware of the commotion. When I learned the particulars of what had occurred and observed that the management had failed to adequately protect a guest from harassment, I made the previous owner an offer he found sufficiently compelling to accept immediately. Raphael's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested steel beneath the courtesy. The former manager has been dismissed. This will not be the sort of establishment that permits such behavior. She stared at him, trying to process what he was telling her. You bought an entire restaurant because my ex-husband made a scene? I bought an entire restaurant because a woman was subjected to public abuse and no one stopped it. Raphael corrected gently. That reflects a failure of basic human decency. I do not tolerate such failures in establishments I frequent, so I have removed the problem. Valentina felt something crack inside her chest, something she'd kept carefully sealed since the divorce. She'd grown so used to being told she was overreacting, being sensitive, making things difficult. Damien had spent years convincing her that his behavior was normal, that her hurt was unreasonable, that she was the problem in every scenario. And here was a complete stranger calmly stating that what had happened to her was unacceptable, that someone should have stopped it, that she deserved protection. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me. Raphael was quiet for a moment, his pale eyes studying her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. Let me ask you something, Miss Delacroix. If you had seen what happened tonight occur to another woman, a stranger, would you have thought she deserved it? No, of course not. Would you have thought the man harassing her had any right to speak to her that way? Absolutely not. Then why? Raphael asked softly. Do you imagine you deserve less consideration than you would offer a stranger? The question landed like a blow. Valentina felt her throat tighten, felt more tears threatening. She'd asked herself similar things in therapy, but hearing it from this elegant stranger who'd just upended an entire business to prove his point made it real in a way her own thoughts never had. I don't have a good answer to that, she admitted. Most people in your position do not. Raphael leaned back slightly, giving her space. Ms. Delacroix, I want you to understand something. What happened tonight was not your fault. Not the harassment itself, not your date's departure, not the attention it drew, none of it. You were attempting to enjoy an evening out, and you were mistreated. That is entirely on the person who mistreated you and the staff who failed to intervene. You sound very sure about that. I am very old, Raphael said. And something in the way he said it made Valentina think he meant it more literally than she could understand. I have seen a great many people in a great many situations. I have learned to recognize when someone's self-perception has been deliberately damaged by another person's cruelty. You carry that damage like a brand, Miss Delacroix. It is not your natural state. It is something that was done to you. She couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but sit there as this strange, beautiful man saw through every defense she'd built and named the truth she'd been too afraid to fully acknowledge. I'm going to make you a promise, Raphael continued. This restaurant is now under my ownership and protection. You are welcome here at any time, free of charge, for as long as you wish. If that man or anyone else attempts to disturb you here again, they will be removed immediately and will face consequences I assure you they will find extremely discouraging. You will not be harassed. You will not be made to feel small. You will not be treated as anything less than a valued guest worthy of respect and dignity. I can't accept that, Valentina protested weakly. That's too much. You can't just give me free meals forever because my ex-husband is an asshole. I can do exactly that, as I own the establishment and make the rules. Raphael's expression softened almost imperceptibly. But if it makes you uncomfortable, consider it an apology on behalf of the previous management. Consider it compensation for pain and suffering. Consider it whatever allows you to accept that you deserve to have one place in this city where you know you are safe and welcome. Valentina wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold together against the wave of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Why are you being so kind to me? Raphael looked away for the first time, his gaze distant. Because once, a very long time ago, I witnessed something similar happen to someone I cared for. I did nothing. I thought it was not my place to intervene, that she would handle it herself, that it was a private matter between her and the man who was slowly destroying her in public, one small cruelty at a time. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. By the time I understood that my inaction was itself a choice, a form of complicity, it was too late. She was too worn down to fight anymore. She simply gave up. I'm sorry, Valentina said quietly. As am I, every day. Raphael turned his attention back to her. I cannot undo that failure, but I can choose now not to be a bystander when I see someone in need of help. I can choose to be better than I was. They sat in silence for a moment, the restaurant's ambient noise washing over them. Valentina realized that at some point during their conversation, the curious stares had stopped. The other diners had returned to their own meals, their own conversations. Whatever strange bubble Raphael's presence created, it seemed to shield her from further scrutiny. I don't know what to say, she finally told him. Thank you seems completely inadequate. Thank you is more than sufficient. Raphael stood, moving with that same liquid grace. The staff has been instructed to prepare whatever you would like, should you wish to stay and have dinner. If you would prefer to leave, that is entirely understandable, and the offer remains open for whenever you are ready. There is no pressure, no obligation, only an open door should you choose to walk through it. Valentina looked down at the table, at the appetizers she and Marcus had ordered, now cold and congealing, at the wine glasses still half full, at the wreckage of her attempt to be normal again. Then she looked up at Raphael, at this strange man who'd just bought a restaurant to prove a point about her worth. Could I have a few minutes to think about it? Take all the time you need, Miss Delacroix. I will be upstairs should you require anything." He inclined his head in a gesture that seemed courtly, old-fashioned. "It was a pleasure to meet you despite the circumstances. I hope very much to see you again." He left before she could respond, moving through the restaurant with a presence that made other people instinctively shift aside, though he never came close to touching anyone. Valentina watched him disappear up a staircase near the back, then looked down at her hands, which had finally stopped shaking. She should leave. Should go home and cry into her pillow and tell herself tomorrow would be better, the way she'd been telling herself for months. Should write this whole night off as another disaster, another piece of evidence that she wasn't ready, that Damien had broken something in her too thoroughly to repair. But Raphael's words kept echoing in her mind. "You deserve to have one place where you know you are safe and welcome." When was the last time anyone had offered her safety? When was the last time someone had seen her hurting and decided, without being asked, to do something about it? Valentina took a breath, then caught the eye of a passing waiter, a young man with kind eyes and an uncertain expression. "Excuse me," she said, proud when her voice came out steady. "Could I see a menu? I'd like to have dinner after all." The waiter's face lit up. "Of course, miss. Right away. And if I may say, we're all very glad you're staying." He brought her a menu, brought her fresh water, brought her a warm smile that felt genuine rather than professional. As Valentina studied the options, she realized that everyone in the restaurant seemed to be going out of their way to not look at her, to give her privacy and space. The table next to hers had somehow accumulated a small privacy screen that definitely hadn't been there before. The lighting in her corner had been adjusted to be softer, more intimate. Raphael had bought a restaurant, fired the manager, and apparently instructed the entire staff to make her feel protected, all in the span of 20 minutes. It was insane. It was excessive. It was completely over the top. It was also the kindest thing anyone had done for her in years. Valentina ordered the risotto and a glass of wine, and when it arrived, it was perfect. She ate slowly, letting herself savor each bite, letting herself occupy space in this restaurant without shame or fear. She didn't think about Damien or Marcus or any of it. She just ate her dinner and drank her wine and existed in a place that someone had decided she deserved to be. When she finished, the waiter brought her a dessert menu. "This is from Mr. Paragrove," he said quietly. "He thought you might enjoy something sweet, but only if you want it. No pressure." Valentina looked at the menu, at the descriptions of tiramisu and chocolate torte and creme brulee. She wasn't particularly hungry anymore, but something about the gesture, about the careful way Raphael kept offering without demanding, made her want to accept. "The tiramisu, please." It arrived with a single perfect strawberry on the side and a dusting of cocoa powder that formed a delicate pattern on the plate. Valentina ate half of it, then asked for a box for the rest. The waiter brought it immediately, along with a small card. She opened it, expecting a business card or perhaps another note from Raphael. Instead, she found a simple message in elegant handwriting. "You were very brave tonight. I hope you are proud of yourself." Valentina tucked the card into her purse, paid nothing despite her protests, and walked out of the restaurant with her head high. She cried the entire drive home, but they were different tears than the ones she'd shed earlier. Cleaner, somehow. Less about shame and more about release. She didn't know who Raphael Paragrove was, not really. Didn't know why he'd helped her or what he wanted, or if she'd ever see him again. But she knew that tonight, for the first time since Damien had convinced her she was worthless, someone had looked at her and seen value. Had decided, without any benefit to himself, that she deserved protection and care. It wasn't everything. It didn't fix the damage or erase the hurt. But it was something. It was a start. And sometimes, Valentina thought as she unlocked her apartment door and set her leftovers in the fridge, a start was enough. 3 days passed before Valentina found the courage to return to the restaurant. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that Raphael had probably forgotten about her already, that his gesture had been a momentary impulse and she shouldn't read more into it than simple kindness. But she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd spoken about deserving better, the way he'd quietly rearranged reality to make her feel safe. She went on a Thursday evening, deliberately choosing a weeknight to avoid crowds. The restaurant looked the same from the outside, same elegant signage, same warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. But when she walked in, the hostess greeted her by name. "Miss Delacroix, welcome back. We're so pleased to see you again." "How did you—" Mr. Paragrove left instructions. "Your table is ready whenever you are." Your table, as if she were a regular, someone expected and known. The hostess led her to a corner booth, private but not isolated, with a view of the street and the restaurant both. It was perfect, and Valentina felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" "Just water for now, please. I'm not sure if I'm staying for a full meal." "Of course. Take your time. There's no rush." The hostess left, and Valentina settled into the booth, running her hands over the soft leather. She didn't know what she was doing here. She'd eaten at home before coming, not wanting to presume too much on Raphael's generosity. She'd told herself she was just coming to say thank you properly, to acknowledge his kindness in person, rather than hiding behind her embarrassment. She definitely wasn't hoping to see him again. That would be foolish. He was clearly wealthy, clearly powerful, clearly way out of her league in every possible sense, and she was a recently divorced woman with more baggage than an airport carousel. There was no world in which this ended well. "Miss Delacroix!" Valentina's head snapped up, and there he was. Raphael looked exactly as he had 3 nights ago, inhumanly beautiful in another perfect suit, this one charcoal gray. He carried himself with the same quiet authority, but when he looked at her, something in his expression eased, as if he'd been genuinely pleased to learn she'd returned. "Mr. Paragrove, I didn't know if you'd be here tonight." "I am here most evenings now. I have discovered I enjoy the work of running a restaurant more than I anticipated." He gestured to the opposite side of the booth. "May I join you, or would you prefer privacy?" "Please sit. I actually came hoping I might see you. I wanted to thank you again for what you did, for all of it." Raphael slid into the booth with that fluid grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. Up close, Valentina could see more details she'd missed in her distress the first night. The way his white hair caught the light like spun silver. The faint lines around his eyes that suggested age despite his youthful appearance. The way he held himself utterly still, no fidgeting or restless movement, as if he existed slightly outside the normal flow of time. "You owe me no thanks," he said, "though I am glad to see you again. I hoped you would return, but I was not certain you would feel comfortable doing so." "Honestly, I almost didn't. It feels strange, accepting help from someone I don't know. My therapist would probably tell me I need to work on that." "Your therapist sounds wise. Though I would argue there is a difference between accepting help and allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. The former is healthy, the latter is dangerous. Learning to distinguish between them is the challenge." Valentina smiled despite herself. "Are you a therapist in addition to being a restaurant owner?" "No, just someone who has made many mistakes over a very long life and learned from them slowly." Raphael's pale eyes studied her with that same unsettling intensity. "How have you been, Miss Delacroix?" "Truly." The question, asked with such genuine care, made her defenses crack. "Honestly, I've been angry. At my ex-husband for ruining my date, at the manager for not stopping him, at Marcus for leaving, at myself for not being stronger. Just angry all the time, and I don't know what to do with it." Anger is not inherently bad. It is often appropriate, even healthy. The question is what you do with it. What did you do with yours? The question came out before Valentina could stop it. Too personal, too probing. "Sorry, that's none of my business." "I turned it inward for a very long time," Raphael said quietly. "I blamed myself for my inaction, for my cowardice. I isolated myself, convinced I did not deserve connection because I had failed someone who needed me. It was not productive, and it did not honor the person I had lost. It simply made me cold and distant and alone. What changed? Time. Understanding. The realization that the person I failed would not have wanted me to spend eternity punishing myself. That the best way to honor her memory was to be better going forward, to intervene when I saw others suffering the way she suffered." He paused. "And then you walked into my restaurant, and I saw the same look in your eyes she used to have. That particular brand of weariness that comes from being told you are worthless so many times you start to believe it. I could not bear to do nothing again." Valentina felt tears prickling at her eyes again. She seemed to cry constantly these days, at the smallest kindness, the smallest acknowledgement. Damien had always mocked her for being too emotional, too sensitive, had told her she cried to manipulate people, to make them feel guilty. She'd learned to swallow her tears, to present a calm facade no matter what she was feeling. But Raphael just sat there, patient and present, not rushing her or dismissing her or telling her she was overreacting. Just waiting, as if her feelings mattered, as if they were worth his time. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "How to trust people again. How to believe that someone might actually care about me without wanting something in return. Damien was so good at making me feel crazy for expecting basic decency. I'm terrified of making the same mistake twice." "Then do not trust me," Raphael said simply. "Not yet. Trust is earned over time, through consistent action. I do not expect you to hand it to me freely simply because I purchased a building and said kind words. I expect you to watch what I do, to test whether my actions match my promises, and to make your decisions based on evidence rather than hope. That's remarkably reasonable. I am a remarkably old man who has learned that demanding trust is the surest way to prove one does not deserve it." He leaned back slightly. "So here is my proposal, Miss Delacroix. Come to this restaurant when you wish. Eat what you like. Speak with me or do not, as you prefer. Let me demonstrate, through action rather than words, that I mean what I say. And if, over time, you decide I am trustworthy, then we can discuss what that might mean. And if you decide I am not, then you owe me nothing and the offer of safe harbor remains regardless." Valentina laughed, surprising herself. "You really did buy a whole restaurant just to have a place to offer me free dinner indefinitely, didn't you?" "I bought a restaurant because it was the right thing to do, and because I could afford it, and because I am very old and very wealthy and somewhat impulsive when I see injustice. The fact that it also provides you with a safe space is simply a pleasant benefit." "What are you, exactly?" The question burst out before Valentina could stop it. "And don't say just a restaurant owner. People don't move like you move. Don't talk like you talk. You said you were very old, and you meant it literally. So what are you?" Raphael was quiet for a long moment, his pale eyes searching her face. "If I tell you, you may not wish to return. You may decide, quite reasonably, that I am too dangerous to know. That would pain me, but I would understand and respect your choice. Just tell me. I'm tired of people hiding things from me because they think I can't handle the truth." "Very well." Raphael's voice dropped even lower, barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. "I am a vampire, Miss Delacroix, one of the old blood, born before your civilization had written language. I rule the vampire territories of this region, which makes me, by human reckoning, a king. I do not age, I do not die by conventional means, and I survive by drinking blood. I am, by most definitions, a monster." Valentina stared at him. Her mind raced through everything she knew about vampires, which was mostly gleaned from movies and books and definitely not reliable. She should be terrified, should be running for the exit, should be calling the police or a priest or someone. Instead, she found herself thinking about how carefully Raphael had treated her, how he'd given her space and choice and respect, how he'd intervened to protect her without asking for anything in return, how he'd told her his darkest secret and then immediately acknowledged she had every right to reject him for it. "Do you kill people?" she asked. "Not for many centuries. I feed from volunteers who are compensated well for their time and protected by contracts that ensure their safety. I am not a good man, Miss Delacroix. I have done terrible things in my very long life, but I am trying to be better than I was. The woman you talked about before, the one you failed to help, was she human?" "Yes." "Did you love her?" Raphael's expression shifted, pain flickering across his features. "I thought I did. Looking back, I think I loved the idea of her more than I knew her truly. I was young then, only a few centuries old, and I did not understand that love requires action, not just feeling. I felt affection for her, but did not defend her when she needed defending. By the time I understood my failure, she had taken her own life. Valentina's breath caught. I'm so sorry. As am I. Every day for 800 years. He straightened slightly. I tell you this not to garner sympathy, but to be honest about who I am and what I have done. You deserve to make an informed choice about whether you wish to know me. You're a vampire king. Yes. Who bought a restaurant to protect me from my ex-husband. Essentially, yes. And you don't want anything from me in return. I want nothing you are not freely willing to give. If that is simply the pleasure of your occasional company over dinner, that is more than sufficient. Valentina sat back, trying to process everything. She should be terrified. This was insane. Vampires weren't supposed to be real, and if they were real, they definitely weren't supposed to be kind. But Raphael had been nothing but honest with her, had given her power in every interaction, had made it clear she could walk away at any time. And honestly, after 4 years of marriage to Damien, the vampire seemed like the safer option. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Not about whether I'm going to run screaming or call some vampire hunters or whatever. Just about what it means. About whether I can handle knowing someone who's that much older and more powerful than me without losing myself again. That is entirely reasonable, and I encourage you to take all the time you need. Raphael stood with his characteristic grace. I will leave you to your thoughts. Please, order whatever you like. Stay as long as you wish. And know that whether you return tomorrow or never, I wish you nothing but peace and happiness, Miss Delacroix. He left before she could respond, disappearing up the stairs to the private dining room. Valentina sat alone in her booth, staring at nothing, trying to reconcile everything she thought she knew about the world with the reality of what she'd just learned. A vampire, an actual vampire, who'd decided she was worth protecting. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was completely insane. It was also, somehow, the most honest thing anyone had offered her in years. Valentina ordered the salmon and a glass of wine, and she sat in her booth in the restaurant that a vampire king had bought to keep her safe, and she thought about what it might mean to trust again. To let someone see her vulnerability and believe they wouldn't use it as a weapon. She didn't have answers. But for the first time in a long time, she thought she might be ready to look for them. Valentina returned to the restaurant the following Tuesday, and then again on Friday. She didn't see Raphael either time, though the staff greeted her warmly and her booth was always available. She wondered if he was giving her space deliberately, allowing her time to process without pressure. It would fit with everything else about him, that careful respect for her autonomy. On the third visit, she finally asked the waiter, a young man named Christopher, if Mr. Paragrove was in that evening. He is, miss, upstairs in the office. Would you like me to let him know you asked for him? Only if he's not busy. I don't want to interrupt. Christopher smiled. I suspect he would drop anything to speak with you, Miss Delacroix. Give me just a moment. He disappeared, and Valentina immediately regretted asking. What was she doing? She'd spent the last week reading everything she could find about vampires, trying to separate fiction from potential fact. Most of it was nonsense, contradictory, and clearly invented by people who'd never met an actual vampire. But some threads appeared consistently across cultures and centuries. Vampires were dangerous, immortal, bound by complex honor codes and ancient politics. Not the sort of beings a recently divorced elementary school teacher should be getting involved with, but then she remembered the way Raphael had looked at her with such careful kindness, the way he'd bought an entire restaurant to prove a point about her worth. The way he'd told her she deserved better and meant it, even though she was nothing to him, a stranger having the worst night of her recent life. Miss Delacroix. Raphael appeared beside her booth, and Valentina's heart did something complicated in her chest. He wore black tonight, severe and elegant, and his pale hair was pulled back in a way that emphasized the sharp beauty of his features. He looked exactly like what he was, ancient and powerful and utterly inhuman. I asked for you, Valentina said, then felt immediately foolish. Obviously, Christopher told you. I just meant I wanted to see you, if you have time. I have all the time in the world, quite literally. Raphael slid into the booth across from her. I am glad you returned. I was not certain you would after our last conversation. I've been doing research about vampires. I can only imagine what you found. Most of it is incorrect, I suspect. Probably, though the general consensus seems to be that your kind is dangerous and I should avoid you at all costs. That is likely sound advice in most cases. Raphael tilted his head slightly. Am I to understand you are choosing not to follow it? I'm choosing to make my own informed decisions rather than letting fear decide for me. There's a difference. Valentina took a breath. You said you'd prove yourself through actions, not words. So I've been watching. I've come here 3 times, and every time the staff has been kind without being intrusive. My booth has been available without me having to ask. No one has pressured me to order more or stay longer or do anything except exist comfortably. That's deliberate, isn't it? You told them to treat me that way. I told them to treat you with the respect and care all guests deserve, but which you were denied on your first visit. Yes. Why? Because you deserve it. How many times must I say this before you believe me? Valentina felt her eyes sting. I don't know. More times than you've said it so far. Maybe forever. Damien spent 4 years telling me I was worthless. That's a lot of repetitions to overcome. Then I will tell you every time I see you, for as long as you allow me to see you. Raphael's pale eyes held hers. You are not worthless, Valentina Delacroix. You are brave and thoughtful and stronger than you give yourself credit for. You survived something that was designed to break you, and you are still here, still trying, still hoping for better. That is extraordinary. You can't possibly know that from 3 conversations. I am an excellent judge of character, honed over millennia of reading people, and I know damage when I see it. I know the difference between someone who is genuinely cruel and someone who has been taught to believe they are less than they are. You are the latter. Valentina looked down at her hands, at the table, at anything except Raphael's too knowing gaze. I came here tonight to ask you something, but I'm not sure how to say it without sounding presumptuous or needy or broken. You could never sound broken to me, damaged perhaps by someone who should have cherished you, but not broken. Ask your question. Would you teach me how to be strong again? I don't mean physically. I mean mentally, emotionally. How to set boundaries and enforce them. How to walk into a room without apologizing for existing. How to believe I deserve the space I take up. She finally looked up at him. You're old. You've survived things I can't imagine. You must know how to be confident, how to command respect. I want to learn that. Raphael was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. What you are asking for is not a simple thing, Valentina. It would require time, trust, and painful honesty. It would require you to confront parts of yourself you have buried to survive. It would not be easy. I know. I'm asking anyway. Why me? You could work with your therapist on this. You could take self-defense classes, join support groups, read books on recovering from emotional abuse. Why ask a vampire king to teach you strength? Valentina considered the question seriously. Because you understand something I don't think a human therapist can. What it's like to live with the weight of past failures. How to move forward when you've been someone you're not proud of. You said you used to be different, that you've changed over centuries. I don't have centuries, but I need to change now. And you're the first person who's looked at me and seen what was done to me, not what's wrong with me. I think that makes you the right teacher. I am not a good man, Valentina. Maybe not. But you've been kind to me when you didn't have to be. That's a start. Raphael leaned back, studying her with those ancient eyes. If I agree to this, you must understand several things. First, I will push you. I will not allow you to hide behind the comfortable lies you tell yourself. I will require honesty, even when it hurts. Second, this will take time. Months, perhaps longer. You cannot undo years of damage in a few weeks. Third, and most important, you can stop at any time. If this becomes too much, if I overstep, if you simply change your mind, you walk away and we never speak of it again. Your autonomy is paramount. Do you understand? I understand. And you still wish to proceed? Yes. Raphael nodded slowly. Then we begin tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. The restaurant will be closed to other guests. Wear comfortable clothing. Bring your courage and your honesty and nothing else. What are we going to do? First, you are going to tell me your story. All of it. Everything your ex-husband did to you. Everything you did to survive it. Everything you have not allowed yourself to say out loud. I need to understand the full scope of what was done to you before I can help you undo it. Valentina's stomach clenched at the thought. She'd told her therapist some of it, but not all. There were things she'd never said out loud, moments she'd buried so deep she barely acknowledged them to herself. The thought of dragging all of that into the light, of speaking it to someone as powerful and perceptive as Raphael, terrified her. Okay, she heard herself say. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Valentina. Raphael reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. You do not have to do this. You do not owe me anything. If you need more time, take it. If you decide this is not what you want, walk away. I will not be offended or disappointed. I only want what is best for you. I know. That's why I'm asking you to help me. She placed her hand over his, felt the coolness of his skin, the complete stillness of someone who didn't breathe or pulse with human life. Tomorrow night. She left shortly after, drove home in a daze, and spent the night staring at her ceiling, wondering what she'd just agreed to. But beneath the fear was something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, fragile, terrifying hope that maybe she could actually change, that maybe she didn't have to carry Damien's voice in her head for the rest of her life, that maybe, with the help of an ancient vampire who'd bought a restaurant to protect her, she could learn to protect herself. The restaurant was dark when Valentina arrived the next evening, all the lights off except for a soft glow from the upper floor. She'd worn jeans and a sweater, comfortable like Raphael had requested, and she'd left her phone in the car. Whatever happened tonight, she wanted no distractions, no escape routes. She knocked on the door and Raphael appeared almost immediately, opening it with a slight smile. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might reconsider, which would have been entirely reasonable. He stepped aside, allowing her in. We will work upstairs, more privacy, more comfortable. Valentina followed him up the stairs to the private dining room she'd seen only from a distance before. It was beautiful, all dark wood and velvet upholstery, with a fireplace along one wall and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Raphael had arranged 2 chairs near the fireplace, angled toward each other, close but not uncomfortably so. Sit, please. Can I get you anything? Water? Wine? Tea? Wine, I think. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. He poured her a glass of red, something that probably cost more than her monthly car payment, and settled into the opposite chair. The firelight played across his white hair and pale skin, making him look like something carved from marble, beautiful and cold and timeless. Before we begin, Raphael said quietly, I want to establish some rules. First, everything you tell me tonight stays between us. I will not repeat it, will not use it against you, will not judge you for it. Second, if at any point you need to stop, you say the word and we stop immediately. No questions, no pressure. Third, I may ask difficult questions, but you are never required to answer them. Your comfort and safety come first, always. Understood? Understood. Then tell me about your marriage, Valentina. From the beginning. Valentina took a long drink of wine, felt it burn warm down her throat. She'd practiced this, in her head, in therapy, in the mirror. But actually sitting here, with Raphael's ancient gaze on her, made everything feel more real, more raw. I met Damien 6 years ago at a fundraiser for the school where I teach. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. He pursued me hard, said all the right things, made me feel special. We got married after 8 months. I thought I was lucky. I thought I'd found someone who really loved me. When did it change? Almost immediately after the wedding. Little things at first. Comments about my weight, my cooking, the way I dressed, always framed as concern, as trying to help me be better. He'd say things like, I just want you to be the best version of yourself, or I'm only saying this because I care. And I believed him. I thought he was right, that I needed to try harder. Be better. Raphael's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested a deep, old anger. Continue. It escalated. He started controlling money, telling me I was bad with finances, and he needed to manage everything. He isolated me from friends, said they were a bad influence, that they didn't understand our relationship. He criticized me constantly, but always in private or in front of people he knew wouldn't intervene. And when I tried to push back, he'd make me feel crazy. He'd say I was too sensitive, that I was imagining things, that I was the problem. What you are describing is called gaslighting. It is a deliberate tactic to undermine someone's sense of reality. I know that now. I didn't then. Or maybe I did, but I couldn't acknowledge it. It's easier to believe you're the problem than to accept that someone you love is deliberately hurting you. A truth many people learn too late. Raphael leaned forward slightly. What happened the night at the restaurant? That was not the first time he had humiliated you publicly. Valentina shook her head. No, he did it all the time. Small comments in front of friends, criticism disguised as jokes, undermining me whenever I tried to speak. But that night was different because I'd finally left him. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. I thought I was free. I thought I could start over. But he could not let you go. No, he saw me on that date and decided to destroy it, to prove he still had power over me, to make sure I knew I couldn't be happy without his permission. The words came faster now, years of suppressed anger bubbling up. And it worked. Marcus left. Everyone saw me humiliated, and I felt exactly as small and worthless as Damien always said I was, until you intervened. What would you have done if I had not intervened? The question stopped her. Valentina thought about it, really considered it. I probably would have gone home and cried, would have told myself I wasn't ready to date, would have canceled my therapy appointments because I was too embarrassed to talk about what happened, would have let Damien win again, the way I always let him win. And now? If he appeared in this restaurant tonight, tried the same tactics, what would you do? I don't know. I'd like to say I'd stand up to him, tell him to go away, call the police if he refused. But honestly, I'd probably freeze again. That's why I need your help. I want to be someone who fights back. Raphael was quiet for a moment, his pale eyes studying her in the firelight. Valentina, I need to tell you something, and you may not like it. Strength is not the absence of fear. It is not standing up to your abuser with perfect confidence and sharp words. Sometimes strength is simply surviving. Sometimes it is seeking help when you cannot fight alone. Sometimes it is choosing to leave, even when leaving is the hardest thing you have ever done. You are already strong. You simply do not recognize it yet. I don't feel strong. Because your ex-husband spent years teaching you not to. He broke down your confidence systematically, deliberately, because confident people are harder to control. But you divorced him. You started therapy. You attempted to date again despite your fear. You came here tonight and told me your story, even though it hurt. That is strength, Valentina. You are doing the work. You simply need help seeing it. Tears were streaming down her face now, though she barely noticed. I want to be more than just surviving. I want to thrive. I want to walk into a room and not feel like I have to make myself small. I want to believe I deserve good things without waiting for someone to tell me it's okay. Then that is what we will work toward. Not some fantasy version of strength where you never feel fear or doubt, but real sustainable confidence built on understanding your own worth. Raphael stood, crossed to a cabinet, and returned with a box of tissues. Here, take your time. We have all night. Valentina wiped her eyes, blew her nose, tried to compose herself. What now? Now you tell me what you want your life to look like in 6 months. Not what you think you should want, not what would make other people happy. What you, Valentina Delacroix, actually want for yourself. It should have been an easy question, but Valentina found herself struggling, realizing with a sick jolt that she had no idea what she wanted. She'd spent so long focused on what Damien wanted, what would keep the peace, what would make her acceptable, that her own desires had atrophied into nothing. I don't know, she admitted. Isn't that pathetic? I don't even know what I want. It is not pathetic. It is the natural result of being with someone who taught you your wants did not matter. But we will find them again, together. Start small. What did you enjoy before you met him? What made you happy? Valentina thought back, reaching for memories she'd buried. I used to paint, watercolors mostly, landscapes and abstracts. I wasn't very good, but I loved it. Damien said it was a waste of time and money, so I stopped. What else? I liked hiking, being outdoors. I had a group of friends I'd go with on weekends. Damien said they were boring and he never wanted to come, so eventually I stopped going too. Continue. I wanted to travel, see Europe, maybe Asia. Damien said we couldn't afford it, but he always had money for his hobbies, his golf trips with colleagues. I wanted to take cooking classes, learn to make French pastries. I wanted to volunteer at the animal shelter. I wanted a dog. The words were coming faster now, a dam breaking. I wanted to feel like my home was mine, not just a stage set for his life. I wanted to wear bright colors instead of the neutrals he preferred. I wanted to cut my hair short. I wanted to take up space without apologizing for it. Then that is where we start. Raphael's voice was gentle but firm. Tomorrow, you will do one thing from that list. Paint something, wear a bright color, research cooking classes, something small but meaningful. Then the next day, you will do another. We will rebuild your life piece by piece, reclaiming everything he took from you. What if he finds out? What if he tries to stop me? Then we will deal with it. Together. But Valentina, you must understand something. He has no power over you anymore except what you give him. He cannot control your money, your choices, your life. He can shout and threaten and humiliate, but those are the tools of a weak man desperately clinging to power he never deserved. You are free. You simply need to learn to live like it. Valentina sat with that for a moment, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. She was free, legally, practically free. The chains she felt were all in her mind, habits of thought and behavior she'd learned to survive her marriage, and habits could be unlearned. Will you help me? She asked quietly. Not just with the big things, but with the small daily work of remembering I deserve better. Every step of the way for as long as you need me. Raphael reached out, took her hand in his cool grip. You are not alone in this, Valentina, not anymore. They talked for 3 more hours that night. Raphael asking careful questions, Valentina excavating parts of herself she'd thought long dead. He made her laugh with stories from his impossibly long life, made her think with observations about human nature and the ways people protect themselves. And when she finally left, well past midnight, she felt lighter than she had in years. The work had begun, and for the first time, Valentina believed she might actually succeed. Over the following weeks, Valentina fell into a rhythm. She would teach during the day, go home and paint, or work on some other reclaimed hobby in the evening, then meet Raphael at the restaurant 3 or 4 nights a week. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence while she painted, and he worked on restaurant business. Sometimes he took her out into the city, teaching her to navigate the world with confidence, to set boundaries, to recognize when someone was trying to manipulate her. He was patient and demanding in equal measure, calling her out when she fell into old patterns of self-deprecation, but never making her feel stupid for the slip. He celebrated her victories, no matter how small. When she wore a bright red dress to school and didn't apologize for how it looked, he toasted her with expensive champagne. When she told a pushy salesperson no and meant it, he looked at her with such pride she felt invincible. And slowly, gradually, Valentina began to recognize herself again. The person she'd been before Damien, but stronger now, tempered by survival. She also began to notice other things about Raphael, the way his expression would soften when she walked into the restaurant, how he seemed genuinely interested in the small details of her day, her students' achievements, her painting progress, the careful way he never touched her without permission, but how his hand would sometimes linger when she reached for his. She was falling for him. She knew it was probably foolish, definitely complicated. He was a vampire king, immortal and powerful and completely out of her league. She was a divorced elementary school teacher, still learning how to function without constant criticism. There was no world where this made sense, but when she was with him, she felt safe. seen, valued, and that was worth more than cents. 2 months into their arrangement, Valentina arrived at the restaurant to find Raphael waiting with an unusual expression, something between anger and grim satisfaction. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Nothing is wrong. Something is, in fact, very right, though you may not see it that way initially." He gestured to his office. "Come upstairs. We need to talk." Valentina followed, her stomach tight with sudden anxiety. Had she done something wrong? Was he ending their arrangement? Had Damien done something? Raphael closed the office door and turned to face her. "I have been monitoring your ex-husband's activities since the night we met. Purely for your safety, I want to be clear. I wanted to ensure he was not escalating, not becoming a physical threat. And in the course of that monitoring, my people uncovered something interesting. Your ex-husband has been committing tax fraud for the past 5 years. Significant fraud, to the tune of several $100,000. He has also been embezzling from his employer, though that is a more recent development." Valentina's mouth fell open. "What?" "I have documentation, bank statements, emails, falsified tax returns, everything the authorities would need to build a case." Raphael pulled a thick folder from his desk. "The question is what you want to do with this information." "I don't understand. Why are you giving it to me?" "Because it is your choice, not mine. You could take this to the police, or to the IRS, or to his employer. Any of those actions would result in significant consequences for him. Prison time, financial ruin, public humiliation. Everything he put you through returned to him through legal channels." Raphael's pale eyes held hers. "Or you could do nothing. You could let it go, walk away, move on with your life without seeking any form of retribution. Either choice is valid. Either choice is yours to make." Valentina took the folder with shaking hands, flipped through the pages. It was all there, meticulously documented, undeniable. Damien had been stealing, lying, breaking the law while presenting himself as upstanding and successful, while telling her she was the problem, that she couldn't manage money, that she was a burden. The vindictive part of her, the part that still carried every humiliation and cruel word, wanted to burn his life down the way he'd tried to burn hers, wanted to watch him suffer consequences for once, wanted him to know what it felt like to be small and powerless and exposed. But there was another part, quieter but growing stronger, that just wanted to be free of him. That didn't want to spend energy on revenge when she could spend it on building something new. "What would you do?" she asked Raphael. "It does not matter what I would do. This is your decision." "I know, but I'm asking anyway. What would you do?" Raphael considered for a moment. 800 years ago, I would have killed him slowly and displayed his body as a warning. 400 years ago, I would have ruined him financially and professionally through manipulation and influence. 200 years ago, I would have challenged him to a duel and taken satisfaction in his humiliation. He paused. Now, I would give him exactly what the law prescribes. Nothing more, nothing less. Justice without personal vendetta. Clean, final, and utterly impersonal. But that is me, and I am not you. Valentina looked down at the folder, at years of her ex-husband's crimes documented in black and white. She thought about the night at the restaurant, about Marcus fleeing, about sitting alone and shaking while Damien laughed. She thought about 4 years of being told she was worthless, incompetent, the problem. If I do this, he'll know it was me. He'll try to retaliate. He will know someone found out, but he will not know who or how. My people were extremely careful. And if he attempts to contact you or harass you in any way, he will be violating the restraining order you are going to file tomorrow. Raphael pulled out another folder. I took the liberty of having my attorneys draw up the paperwork. You simply need to sign and file. Between the restraining order and the criminal investigation, he will be far too busy to bother you. You've thought of everything. I have had a very long time to learn how to protect people I care about. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Valentina wasn't sure she was ready to examine. She looked at the folders, at the evidence of Damien's crimes, at the restraining order that would legally prohibit him from contacting her. She thought about the person she was becoming, the confidence she was rebuilding, and she thought about what would let her sleep at night. "I'm going to do it," she said finally. "Not because I want revenge, but because he's hurting people, stealing from them, and he needs to be stopped. If I do nothing and he continues, that makes me complicit. So I'm going to turn over the evidence, file the restraining order, and then I'm going to move on with my life. I'm going to let the system handle it and focus on being happy." Raphael's expression shifted into something that might have been respect or pride or both. "That is a very mature decision. Is it weird that I'm scared, not of him retaliating, of what happens after? Once I do this, close this chapter completely, I have to figure out what comes next, and that's terrifying. What comes next is whatever you choose. That is the gift of freedom, Valentina. It is also the burden, but you are not alone in it." He moved closer, careful and deliberate. "I would very much like to be part of what comes next, if you will allow it." Valentina's breath caught. "Raphael, I know I am not an easy choice. I know there are complications, practicalities that would need to be addressed, but I have spent 800 years telling myself I did not deserve connection, did not deserve to care about someone after failing so badly before. And then you walked into my restaurant, and I realized that the person I failed would not have wanted me to spend eternity alone. She would have wanted me to be better, to do better. And I am trying. You've been nothing but good to me. I want to be more than good to you. I want to be yours, if you will have me. I want to stand beside you as you rebuild your life and become the person you were meant to be. I want to protect you from harm, but also trust you to fight your own battles. I want to be your partner, Valentina, in whatever form that takes." She should say no, should protect herself, should recognize that this was moving too fast, that she was too raw, too recently free to make good decisions about relationships. But when she looked at Raphael, at his ancient eyes and careful hands, and the way he'd spent months helping her find herself again, she couldn't find fear. "I want that too," she admitted. "I'm terrified, and I don't know how it works, and I'm probably going to be a mess about it, but I want to try. With you." Raphael's smile was like sunrise, slow and transformative and beautiful. "Then we will try together, slowly, at whatever pace you need, with complete honesty and open communication. And if at any point it becomes too much, we stop. Your well-being comes first. Always. You can't keep putting me first. That's not how partnerships work. Then you will have to teach me. I am old, Valentina, and set in my ways, but I am willing to learn." He held out his hand. "Shall we begin?" She took it, felt the cool strength of his grip, the absolute certainty in his touch. And for the first time in years, Valentina felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Filing the evidence against Damien was simultaneously anticlimactic and terrifying. Valentina met with an attorney, handed over the folder, signed the restraining order paperwork. Within a week, federal agents were at Damien's door. Within 2 weeks, he was arrested. Within a month, he was facing multiple felony charges and had lost his job. He never contacted Valentina directly. The restraining order and the criminal charges kept him occupied, and whatever pull he'd once had over her psyche had finally broken. She saw his arrest on the news, saw his picture in the paper, and felt nothing but a distant sort of relief. He couldn't hurt her anymore. He couldn't hurt anyone anymore. She focused instead on building her new life. She enrolled in a watercolor class and discovered she was actually pretty good. She adopted a dog from the shelter, a sweet-faced mutt named Pickle, who followed her everywhere and slept at the foot of her bed. She reconnected with old friends, rebuilt the social connections Damien had severed. She painted her apartment walls bright colors and cut her hair short and wore what she wanted without asking permission from anyone. And she spent nearly every evening with Raphael. He was unlike anyone she'd ever known, and not just because he was a vampire. He was thoughtful and patient, endlessly interested in her opinions, her day, her thoughts. He listened when she talked about her students, remembered their names and stories. He encouraged her painting, bought her supplies, displayed her work in the restaurant with genuine pride. He introduced her to his world slowly, carefully, making sure she understood what she was agreeing to at each step. She met other vampires, dignified and ancient beings who treated Raphael with deference and Valentina with cautious courtesy. She learned about the complex politics of vampire society, the territories and treaties and old alliances that governed their world. She learned that Raphael was not just a king, but the king, one of the oldest and most powerful vampires in existence, respected and occasionally feared by his peers. It should have been intimidating, should have made her feel small and inadequate. But Raphael never allowed his power to diminish her. He introduced her as his partner, made it clear that disrespecting her meant disrespecting him, and ensured she always had the option to walk away if the vampire world became too much. She also learned the realities of dating someone who was immortal, the fact that he would never age while she would, the complicated questions about the future, about what she wanted, about whether she could handle loving someone who would eventually watch her die. They had that conversation 4 months into their relationship, late at night in Raphael's private quarters above the restaurant. "I need to know what you're thinking," Valentina said quietly. They were curled together on his sofa, her head on his chest, even though he had no heartbeat to listen to. "About the future. About what happens when I get old, and you don't." Raphael was quiet for a moment, his cool fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "I have been thinking about it a great deal. There are options if you wish to explore them." "You mean turning me?" "Yes, but Valentina, you must understand what that would mean. It is not simply immortality. It is leaving behind your human life entirely. You would need to feed on blood. You would never see sunlight again. You would outlive everyone you know who chose to remain human. It is not a decision to make lightly." "Have you turned people before?" "Twice. Both times at their request, both times people I cared for deeply. One thrived and is still a dear friend. The other regretted it, found immortality unbearable, and eventually chose to end her existence. It is not a guaranteed path to happiness." Valentina sat up, turned to face him. "What do you want? If you could have anything, what would you choose? I want you happy and whole for as long as possible. If that means you remain human and we have 50 years together before you age beyond me, I will treasure every moment and mourn when you are gone. If that means you choose to turn and we have eternity together, I will help you adjust and build a new life within my world. Either way, I simply want you, Valentina. However I can have you, for however long you allow." "I don't want to die," she admitted. "I don't want to leave you. But I'm also not sure I'm ready to give up being human. I just got my life back. I just figured out who I am. The idea of changing everything again so soon feels overwhelming." "Then don't decide now. We have time. You are young, healthy. We can revisit this conversation in 10 years, 20, whenever you feel ready. There is no pressure, no deadline. I will not love you less if you choose to remain human, and I will not resent the grief I will feel when you eventually pass. That is simply the price of loving mortals, and it is a price I am willing to pay." "You're sure?" "I am absolutely certain. I have lived a very long time, Valentina. I have had many companions, many friends, a few loves, but I have never felt like this before. Never felt like someone saw all of me, the good and the terrible, and chose me anyway. You are extraordinary, and I am honored you allow me to be part of your life. That is enough. Everything else is details we can work out together." Valentina kissed him then, pouring months of gratitude and affection and growing love into the contact. He responded carefully, always careful with her, always conscious of his strength and her comparative fragility. But there was nothing fragile about what she felt for him. It was solid and real and growing stronger every day. "I love you," she said when they finally broke apart. "I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I love you. I love you as well, more than I have loved anyone in 800 years. More than I thought I was capable of loving after everything I have done and failed to do." Raphael cupped her face in his cool hands. "You have given me a gift I did not think I deserved, a second chance at being better than I was. I will spend whatever time we have together trying to be worthy of it. You already are." They stayed up talking until dawn, making plans and discussing possibilities, and simply existing together in the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other completely. And when the sun began to rise and Raphael had to retreat to his light-sealed chambers, Valentina drove home with Pickle and painted a portrait of two hands clasped together, one warm and tan, one cool and pale, meeting in the middle. She titled it Partnership and hung it in her apartment where she could see it every morning. The trial happened in the spring, nearly 8 months after that first disastrous date. Valentina attended, not because she wanted to see Damien, but because the prosecutor said her presence might help. She sat in the gallery with Raphael beside her, his cool hand wrapped around hers, and watched as evidence of her ex-husband's crimes was presented in methodical detail. Damien looked smaller than she remembered, diminished. He kept glancing at her, trying to catch her eye, but she looked through him rather than at him. He had no power over her anymore. He was just a sad man who'd built his self-worth on controlling someone else, and now he was facing the consequences. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Damien's face crumpled when the verdict was read, and Valentina felt nothing but a distant sort of pity. He'd done this to himself, had chosen cruelty and theft and lies, and now he was reaping what he'd sown. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Damien got 7 years in federal prison, plus restitution to his victims and his former employer. He would be banned from certain professions upon release, would have a felony record that would follow him forever. His life as he knew it was over. Valentina walked out of the courthouse into bright spring sunshine, Raphael at her side, and realized she felt lighter than air. "It's over," she said, wonderingly. "It's actually over." "How do you feel?" "Free. Completely, entirely free. He can't touch me anymore. He can't hurt me or control me or make me feel small. He's just a criminal going to prison, and I'm just someone who's moving on with her life." Raphael smiled, genuine and warm. "Then let us celebrate your freedom properly. What would you like to do?" Valentina thought about it, about all the things she'd wanted to do but couldn't while Damien controlled her life. "I want to reopen the restaurant, not as your private place to keep me safe, but as an actual business, open to everyone. I want to turn it into something beautiful and welcoming, a place where people can feel valued and cared for. I want to help you run it, be your partner in it. What do you think?" "I think that is a wonderful idea. Though, are you certain you want to take on such a large project? You already have your teaching and your painting." "I'm sure. I want to build something new, something mine, something we create together." She squeezed his hand. "Will you let me?" "I would be honored to build something with you, Valentina. More honored than you know." They spent the next 3 months preparing to reopen. Valentina threw herself into the project with enthusiasm she hadn't felt in years. She worked with designers to update the space, keeping the elegant bones but making it warmer, more inviting. She helped develop the menu, insisting on dishes that felt comforting rather than pretentious. She trained the staff personally on how to treat guests with genuine care and respect, how to recognize when someone needed space versus attention. Raphael worked beside her every step, contributing his resources and experience, but always deferring to her vision. He made it clear to everyone involved that this was Valentina's project, that her word was law, that she was to be respected and listened to. And when she occasionally doubted herself, fell into old patterns of second-guessing her decisions, he would gently remind her of how far she'd come. "You are not the woman who walked into this restaurant 8 months ago," he told her during a particularly stressful week before the reopening. "That woman was fragile and afraid and convinced she deserved nothing. You are strong and capable and building something beautiful. Trust yourself, Valentina." "I do." The reopening was set for a Friday night in early June. Valentina had invited her friends, her therapist, some of her favorite colleagues from school. The restaurant was packed, every table full, the energy warm and welcoming. She'd worn a brilliant blue dress she never would have dared to wear a year ago, and she'd styled her short hair with confidence, and she moved through the space like she owned it because, in a very real sense, she did. Raphael watched from the bar, elegant in black as always, his pale eyes tracking her movement with obvious pride and affection. When she caught his gaze, he smiled, and Valentina felt her heart do that complicated thing it always did around him. "This is incredible," her friend Sarah said, appearing at her elbow with a glass of wine. "Valentina, seriously, I'm so proud of you. A year ago, you were barely holding it together, and now you're running a restaurant with a gorgeous man who clearly worships you. How did this happen?" "A lot of therapy and some very good luck," Valentina said, laughing. "And Raphael. Definitely Raphael. I couldn't have done any of this without him. He's the owner, right? The one who bought the place." "Yes, he's also my partner, in business and in life." Sarah's eyes went wide. "Wait, you're dating the Vampire King, Valentina? You know about vampires?" "Everyone knows about vampires if you pay attention. We just don't talk about it because it's considered rude. But seriously, the Vampire King. How did that happen?" Valentina glanced at Raphael, who was now deep in conversation with one of the sommeliers, looking relaxed and happy. "He helped me when I needed it most, and then he kept helping. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with him, and miracle of miracles, he fell in love with me too." "That's incredibly romantic." "It really is. I never thought I'd get something like this, you know. After Damien, I thought I was too broken for love, but Raphael showed me I wasn't broken, just hurt, and hurt things can heal." The evening was a massive success. Guests raved about the food, the atmosphere, the service. Valentina's teacher friends cornered her to say how proud they were. Her therapist gave her a long hug and whispered that she was a completely different person than she'd been a year ago. And through it all, Raphael was there, a steady presence supporting her without overshadowing her. When the last guest finally left well past midnight, Valentina collapsed into a booth with a satisfied sigh. Raphael slid in across from her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. "To partnerships," Valentina countered, clinking hers against his. They drank in comfortable silence, watching the staff clean up, the easy rhythm of people who worked well together. Valentina thought about how far she'd come, about the woman she'd been that first night versus who she was now. It felt like a lifetime of growth packed into less than a year. "I have something for you," Raphael said quietly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Valentina's heart jumped into her throat. "Raphael, it is not what you think, or perhaps it is exactly what you think depending on what you want it to be." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring with an intricate pattern etched into the band. "In my culture, among vampires of the old blood, we have a tradition. When 2 people choose to build a life together, to be partners in all things, they exchange rings as a symbol of that commitment. It is not marriage as humans understand it, but it is every bit as binding and sacred. What does the pattern mean? It is your name and mine, written in a language older than human civilization. A promise that we are bound together, that we choose each other, that we will face whatever comes as partners." He took her hand carefully. "Valentina Delacroix, I am asking if you will accept this ring and all it represents. I am asking if you will build a life with me, knowing it will be complicated and strange and sometimes difficult. I am asking if you trust me enough to try." Valentina looked at the ring, at Raphael's ancient eyes, at the restaurant they'd built together. She thought about the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. She thought about trust and partnership and love earned through action rather than words. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Yes to all of it. The complications and the strangeness and the difficulties. Yes to building a life with you. Yes to partnership and trust and whatever comes next. Just yes." Raphael slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, the silver warm against her skin. Then he stood, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her with such tenderness it made her eyes sting with happy tears. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "My brave, brilliant, extraordinary Valentina. I will spend whatever time we have together trying to deserve you." "You already do. You have since the night you bought a restaurant to protect a stranger." She pulled back to look at him properly. "I love you too, More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You gave me back myself, Raphael. That's a gift I can never fully repay. You repay it every day by choosing to be here, by choosing me. That is more than enough. They stayed in the restaurant until dawn, making plans and dreaming about the future. About expanding to other locations, about the life they would build together, about whether Valentina would eventually choose to turn or live out her natural life with Raphael by her side. About trips they would take and art she would create and the thousands of small moments that would make up their partnership. And when the sun began to rise and Raphael had to leave, Valentina drove home to her bright, colorful apartment and her dog and her paintings, wearing a silver ring that promised partnership and love and a future she'd earned through survival and courage. She painted that morning before sleeping, a portrait of two figures standing together against the dawn, one pale as marble, one warm as summer, equal partners facing the light. She titled it "Beginning Again" and hung it in the restaurant the next day, where it would greet every guest who walked through the doors. A year later, the restaurant had expanded to 3 locations across the city, each one bearing Valentina's touch, each one a space designed to make people feel valued and safe. She'd quit her teaching job to run the business full-time, though she still volunteered at schools and donated generously to arts programs. Her paintings had been featured in 2 gallery shows, and she'd sold several pieces, though the money mattered less than the validation that her art had value. Damien was still in prison, and would be for several more years. Valentina barely thought about him anymore. He'd become a footnote in her story, rather than the defining chapter, a cautionary tale about the wrong kind of man rather than a permanent scar. She'd also grown comfortable in Raphael's world, moving easily among vampires and humans both, respected and valued in both communities. Some vampires still looked at her oddly, a human partnered with one of their oldest and most powerful kings. But Raphael made it clear that disrespecting her meant disrespecting him, and no one was foolish enough to risk his displeasure. They were happy. It was that simple and that complicated. Happy in the day-to-day rhythm of running businesses and building a life together. Happy in the quiet moments and the grand gestures. Happy in a way Valentina had never imagined possible. But the question of her mortality still lingered, unspoken but present. She was approaching 30 now, still young by any measure, but the years were passing and would continue to pass. Eventually, she would have to decide. They had the conversation on a cool autumn evening, 2 years to the day after that first disastrous date that had brought them together. "I've been thinking about turning," Valentina said without preamble. They were in Raphael's private chambers, curled together on his massive bed, comfortable in the silence they'd built. And I think I want to do it. Not now, maybe not for another few years, but eventually. I don't want to lose you, Raphael. I don't want to grow old while you stay the same. I don't want our time together to be measured in decades when it could be measured in centuries. You are certain? You understand what you would be giving up? I understand. I've talked to other vampires, done research, thought about it constantly. I know I'd never see sunlight again. I know I'd have to feed on blood. I know I'd outlive my human friends and family. But I also know that I want to be with you for as long as possible. And if that means becoming what you are, then that's what I choose. Raphael pulled her closer, his cool body against her warm one. I will not lie and say this does not please me. The thought of centuries with you, of never losing you, of building an eternity together, it is more than I dared hope for. But Valentina, you must be absolutely certain. Once it is done, it cannot be undone. I know. That's why I'm not rushing into it. I want a few more years as human. I want to see some more sunrises, eat some more food that actually tastes like food, visit my grandmother while she's still alive. But after that, I want to turn. I want to be your partner in all things, including immortality. Then we will make it happen. When you are ready, I will turn you myself, and I will help you adjust to your new existence. We will face it together, as we have faced everything else. Promise me something, Valentina said quietly. Promise that if I turn and it's a mistake, if I can't handle it, you won't try to stop me from ending it. I know it would hurt you, but I need to know I'd have that choice. I promise. Your autonomy has always been paramount to me, Valentina. That will not change even in immortality. If you choose to turn and later choose to end your existence, I will mourn you terribly, but I will not stand in your way. You have my word. Thank you." She kissed him softly. "I don't think it will come to that. I think I'm going to love being immortal with you, but I needed to know I had the option. You always have options with me. Always." He traced patterns on her skin, his touch reverent. "When do you wish to make this transition?" 5 years. That gives me time to settle things, make peace with the change, really think it through. And it gives us 5 more years with me as human, which I think we'll both appreciate. 5 years it is, and then eternity." They spent the rest of the night planning their future, mapping out the centuries they would have together. The places they would visit, the things they would build, the life they would create. It was audacious and beautiful and utterly terrifying in the best possible way. Valentina thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, shaking and humiliated in a restaurant while her ex-husband destroyed her date. That woman could never have imagined this future, could never have believed she'd find love with an ancient vampire, build a successful business, reclaim her confidence and joy. But that woman had been brave enough to stay for dinner when offered safety, had been brave enough to come back, had been brave enough to ask for help rebuilding herself, and every small, brave choice had led to this moment, to this partnership, to this future stretching out in front of her like a gift. "I love you," she told Raphael, because it was true and important and worth saying. "And I love you, more than you will ever fully comprehend. You saved me, Valentina, as surely as I saved you that night. You gave me purpose and hope and a reason to be better than I was. That is a gift beyond measure." Then we saved each other. That seems fair. They stayed wrapped together until dawn, 2 people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment, who'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of Valentina's past. And when the sun rose and Raphael retreated to his light-sealed chambers, Valentina went to the restaurant and opened for breakfast service, greeting guests with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she deserved. 5 years passed in a blur of growth and joy. Valentina's restaurant empire expanded to 12 locations across 3 states, each one a haven of warmth and safety. Her art became well known in certain circles, commanding good prices and critical acclaim. She traveled extensively, visiting all the places she'd dreamed about while married to Damien, soaking up sunrises and experiences she would soon leave behind. She also said goodbye to her human life gradually, carefully. She retired from the restaurant business, training a successor to run things while she was in transition. She visited family and friends, memorizing their faces, making peace with the fact that she would outlive them all. She stood in the sunlight and ate good food and did all the human things she would miss. And through it all, Raphael was beside her, patient and supportive, never rushing her, always making sure she was certain. The turning happened on a cold December night, exactly 7 years after that first disastrous date. Valentina had chosen the timing deliberately, wanting to mark the anniversary of the night that had changed her life. She'd spent the day saying private goodbyes to the sun, to food, to all the small things she was releasing, and as the sun set, she'd gone to Raphael's chambers with her decision final and her courage steady. "I'm ready," she told him. "Turn me." "You are absolutely certain? There is no shame in waiting longer." "I'm certain. I've had 5 years to prepare. I've said my goodbyes. I've made my peace. I want this, Raphael. I want forever with you." He'd explained the process before, how it would work. His venom in her bloodstream, the slow shutdown of her human systems, the painful transformation as her body died and reanimated as something new. It would hurt terribly, and she would be vulnerable for days while her new vampire nature settled, but she wasn't afraid. She trusted Raphael absolutely, knew he would protect her through it, knew he would be there when she woke into her new existence. "Then let us begin." Raphael cupped her face in his cool hands. "I love you, Valentina Delacroix, in life and in death and in whatever comes after. I love you too. Forever, apparently." He bit her then, his fangs piercing her throat, and the pain was immediate and overwhelming. But beneath it was something else, a strange intimacy, the sense of her life flowing out and his venom flowing in, mingling, transforming. She clung to him as her vision darkened, as her heartbeat slowed and stuttered and finally stopped. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was Raphael's voice, quiet and reverent. "Sleep now, my love. When you wake, we begin our eternity." Valentina woke 3 days later to a world transformed. Colors were brighter, sounds clearer, everything intensified beyond human comprehension. She could hear Raphael's breathing in the next room, could smell blood and age and the complex scent that was uniquely him. Her body felt strange, powerful, utterly different from what she'd known, and she was desperately, painfully hungry. Raphael appeared immediately, as if he'd been waiting for her to wake. "Valentina, how do you feel?" "Hungry. Everything hurts and I'm so hungry." "I know. I have prepared for this. Come." He led her to another room where a young woman waited, nervous but willing. Raphael had explained this part too, how new vampires needed to feed from living donors for the first few months while they learned control. The woman had volunteered, had been paid well, had signed contracts ensuring her safety. "Her name is Emma," Raphael said quietly. "She has done this before and knows what to expect. Feed carefully, stop when I tell you. You will not kill her. I will not allow it." Valentina approached Emma slowly, fighting the overwhelming urge to simply attack, to drain her dry. But Raphael's hand on her shoulder steadied her, and his quiet voice in her ear guided her through the process. "Bite gently, drink slowly, stop when the heartbeat begins to weaken." It was the most intense experience of her new life, the taste of blood, the rush of power and satisfaction. But Raphael's voice kept her grounded, kept her from losing herself to the hunger. And when he finally said stop, she stopped, pulling away, even though every instinct screamed to continue. Emma was pale but alive, smiling weakly. "You did great. Way better than most new vampires. Mr. Paragrove must be a good teacher." "The best," Valentina managed, her voice strange to her own ears, richer and deeper. Emma was paid and sent on her way with Raphael's people to ensure she got home safely. And then it was just the two of them, Raphael and his newly turned partner, facing eternity together. "How do you feel?" he asked again. "Strange, powerful, different. Like me, but more, if that makes sense." "Perfect sense. The transformation amplifies what is already there. You were always strong, Valentina. Now you simply have the physical power to match your will." She looked at him, at the man she loved, and realized with a jolt that she could see him differently now. Could see the age in his eyes, the power radiating from him, the absolute control he maintained over his predatory nature. He was magnificent and terrifying and hers. "I don't regret it," she said. "In case you were wondering, I don't regret turning. I am very glad to hear that, though you may feel differently in a few months when the reality of immortality settles in. This is still very new." "Maybe, but I don't think so. This feels right, Raphael. Being here with you, like this. Equal partners in every way now." "Equal partners," he agreed, pulling her close, "for the rest of time." Adjusting to vampire life was both easier and harder than Valentina had anticipated. The physical changes were intense, but manageable. The hunger was strong, but controllable, especially with Raphael's patient teaching. The heightened senses were overwhelming at first, but gradually became normal. The harder part was watching the human world from the outside. Seeing her friends age while she stayed frozen, attending funerals of people she'd loved, recognizing that she was fundamentally different now, separated from humanity by the simple fact of what she was. But Raphael understood, had lived through these losses thousands of times. He held her when she grieved, reminded her that loving mortals was part of being immortal, helped her find meaning in the connections, even though they were temporary. And gradually, Valentina built a new life. She reconnected with the vampire community, found friends among the ancient and the new. She discovered talents she hadn't known she possessed, strength and speed and abilities that were uniquely hers. She learned the complex politics of vampire society and took her place at Raphael's side, his partner and equal in governing their territories. She also reopened the restaurant, this one exclusively for vampires and those who knew about them. A safe space where their kind could gather without pretense, where humans who'd chosen to be part of their world could mingle freely. It became wildly successful, a hub of vampire society, and Valentina ran it with the same care and attention she'd brought to her human ventures. 10 years after her turning, Valentina stood in that restaurant's private room, preparing for a formal event. Raphael was beside her, elegant as always, adjusting his cufflinks with the ease of someone who'd dressed for formal occasions for millennia. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified. I'm about to meet the Vampire Council, the oldest and most powerful vampires in the world, and they're all coming here to judge whether I'm worthy of being your partner. They are coming to acknowledge you formally as my equal and co-ruler of our territories. There is no judgment, only ceremony. And Valentina, they already know you are worthy. Your work speaks for itself." "You're biased, certainly, but also correct." He turned to face her fully, taking in the elegant gown she wore, deep burgundy that complemented her pale vampire complexion. "You are extraordinary, my love. You have built something beautiful from pain and have thrived in a world that was completely foreign to you. The council will see what I see. How could they not?" The ceremony was intense but beautiful. Ancient vampires from around the world gathered to witness Valentina's formal acceptance into their highest ranks. She spoke about her journey, about survival and partnership, and the importance of protecting the vulnerable. She pledged to serve their people with honor and wisdom, to be a bridge between old and new, to help their kind adapt to the changing world. And when it was done, when the council had formally recognized her as Raphael's equal, his true partner in all things, she felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced. She'd come so far from that broken woman in a restaurant 7 years ago, had survived and thrived and become something she never could have imagined. That night, after the ceremony and the formal dinner and all the political maneuvering, Valentina and Raphael retreated to their private chambers. They stood together at the window, looking out over the city they protected, the territories they governed together. "Do you ever miss it?" Raphael asked quietly. "Your human life?" "Sometimes. I miss the sun. I miss certain foods. I miss the simplicity of a mortal life." She leaned into him, fitting against his side perfectly. "But I don't regret the choice. Every day with you is worth what I gave up. Every century we'll have together is worth the sunrises I lost. I am very glad you feel that way, because I cannot imagine existing without you anymore. You have become essential to me, Valentina, my partner in every sense." "Good, because you're stuck with me for eternity now. No takesy-backsies." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I would not dream of it." They stood together as the city lights glittered below them, two beings who'd found each other in the darkest moment and built something luminous from the wreckage. And stretching before them was time, endless and full of possibility, waiting to be filled with love and partnership and all the small moments that would make up their eternity. Valentina thought about the woman she'd been, convinced she was worthless, accepting cruelty as normal. That woman would have been terrified of this life, of this power, of this love. But she'd been brave enough to stay for dinner when offered safety, and that single choice had changed everything. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For buying a restaurant to protect a stranger. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For teaching me that I deserved better and then proving it through action. For loving me enough to help me become who I was meant to be." "You did the becoming yourself, Valentina. I simply provided space for you to grow. We did it together. That's what partners do." "Yes," Raphael agreed, pulling her close. "That is exactly what partners do." And they stood together at the window until dawn forced them to retreat to their light-sealed chambers, partners in all things, bound by choice and love and the promise of forever. The restaurant where they'd met still operated below, a place of safety and warmth where people could feel valued and protected. A monument to the night a cruel ex tried to destroy a woman's hope, and a vampire king decided that was unacceptable. A beginning forged from an ending, a love built on mutual respect and hard-won trust, and stretching before them an eternity to fill with partnership and joy and all the beautiful, complicated, worthwhile work of choosing each other every day, forever. The woman who'd once believed she was worthless had become a vampire queen. The ancient king who'd once failed someone he loved had learned to protect and cherish without smothering. Together, they'd built something neither could have achieved alone. And they lived, genuinely and truly, happily ever after.